Good evening to all the undead ghouls and monsters. We are your horror hosts for tonight's Last Rites. It is the witching hour, and this podcast is going to be a two-part podcast. This is going to consist of Ollin and myself's top 10 horror movies of all time. Top 10 list for me is going to start with Scream 1996. This is the first installment of the Scream series. The reason I chose this was, at the time, horror movies were kind of dead, and there were a lot of B-flick movies just coming out, people just pumping out just movie after movie. You know, anybody thought that they could be a horror movie director and writer and whatnot, and the movies just were not very good. So Wes Craven put this movie out with the help of Kevin Williamson, and at the time Kevin Williamson was extremely hot as a writer. He had a lot of titles under his belt, and so they put together this movie, and it was just, to me, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like a revival of the horror genre, because after this, everybody kind of started taking horror a little more seriously, and I was really happy that it had that resurgence. At least in my opinion, I think this is where the resurgence happened. They had, so many just awful movies in the 80s and the early 90s, and it wasn't until when actually Scream was put on the market, it was just, like I said, it's just a breath of fresh air. To me, it was everything and anything that anybody who's in the horror genre wanted, in a movie. It had, the seriousness of the killing that was going on. It had a whole new character, original character. Although people could argue that this character could have been a slight rip off of other horror icons, but still, I personally think for Ghostface being in this movie was just a brand new take on a horror villain. They based it off the actual Gainesville Ripper, so that was. It had I wouldn't say truth to it, but it had some sense of I guess passion, or I don't think that's the right word. But they had a good background to base their killer or their horror icon on, like most movies. Like what was it? Ed Gein, for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think was their basis for that character. So Wes Craven, Kevin Williamson, 1996 Scream. This had a pretty good cast. Had David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, and the always lovely Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, even Jamie Kennedy was in it, right?
Oh yeah. So the one thing I liked also about the movie is the satire that they made fun of all the old horror movies from before. They basically put it into this movie, and Jamie Kennedy was the man who was delivering all of that to everybody, basically educating all these people on what not to do when there's a serial killer around.
Yeah, lots of really good references, callbacks. It was a really horror film. For anybody who was like a true fan of past horror films before 1996, this was like a really good callback to all of those tropes and all of those mechanics of the horror film genre. Sort of brought to life really on the screen.
Yeah, that's extremely well written. I mean, they couldn't have done it better with anybody else. I think Kevin Williamson, hit this one out of the park, and that's why, like I said, I consider it the resurgence of horror as a whole because of this movie.
Yeah, it really turn of the wrench, I think, at the time. Even with the newness of the character of Ghostface, Roger Jackson was the voice, right?
Yeah, I read that. I actually didn't know for the longest time who it was, and I don't know if it's just the machine that he was using behind his voice, you know, how it amplified it, or if that actually is just his voice amplified, because it sounds like the same voice in all the other Scream movies.
Right.
So I don't know if he's just getting paid for that, if he's actually being credited for it, or if they had just come up with a device that sounds like him so they don't have to use him, you know, to pay him those royalties.
Yeah, just the cadence with which he delivers the lines has become iconic by now.
Yeah, very, very sinister sounding. Although now it's a little more comedic because of just how many of them there are. But it still, you know, it was a whole new game changer.
Right. Yeah, I guess it got memed at this point.
Pretty much. Okay, so that was number 10. My number 9 is a little ditty I like to call The Monster Squad. This is back in 1987. This is basically the Goonies meets Universal Monsters.
Yep, that describes it.
Yeah, they are a club of preteens who idolize the Universal classic monsters, and which, you know, that's how I look at it, is like they were the Goonies, but they were calling themselves the Monster Squad. And the villains in the movie were basically the iconic Universal monsters: Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Mummy, Gillman, or the creature from the Black Lagoon, whichever you want to call him. Although on this one, the Frankenstein's monster was separated from the villainous group and had wandered onto the side of the actual Monster Squad, so he was not a part of their little shindig. This one was directed by Fred Decker, written by Shane Black and also Fred Decker. Shane Black, as we all know, he launched the Lethal Weapon series. He also did Predator. He did Iron Man 3, and his name's attached to a lot of stuff. The Long Kiss Goodnight. He's just a really good writer. This one has basically at the time, I think the dad, who was also the cop, was the only kind of well-known character actor in the series. His name was Stephen Macht, and he played Detective Crenshaw, who was the father of the lead Monster Squad kid. But these were, like I said, these are kind of relatively like unknown actors. There's a couple character actors in it that are known. Like if you saw their face, you would know who they were.
Yeah, you'd be like, hey, it's that guy.
Yeah, exactly. One of the sad things about this movie, though, is a few years later, after the movie, the kid who played Horace, or what they referred to as Fat Kid, in the movie, actually died in real life. And I think it was, I don't actually remember it. I don't know if it was like asthma or something weird. They did a documentary with the guy who played Rudy, Ryan Lambert, and he was explaining like what was happening like with him and how he passed. So, but you know, it kind of sucks. It was a little bit of a downer to find that out, but you know, the rest of the cast, they pretty much all got together to do the anniversary for it. This movie was one of my favorites growing up. I actually got a VHS copy of it and lent it to a neighbor, and she destroyed it, and I was never able to watch it again until it came out on DVD, and then I just bought like almost every copy, like all the different versions of it, just to have it.
Yeah, this one is it's a really good perspective on, because it's all from the perspective of the kid. So as a kid, you really relate and you really get into the mood of the movie and like just sort of put yourself in this universe, and it's very it comes really close to what a kid would really feel in a situation like that.
Yeah, totally. I totally relate, because I was always like, man, I wish there was real monsters, because then I could start a club like this and go fight them.
Yeah, when they had the club and the tree house and everything. Yeah. And Rudy was like, hey, am I a part of the club now? Or yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a good one. I definitely recommend, if you haven't seen this. This is one of those cult classics that is a little under the radar. So you either heard of it or you haven't. And if you haven't, go look it up and find out where you can get a copy of it, because it is a great movie. All right, moving on. My number 8 is from Stephen King. This is a 1989 film called Pet Sematary. This movie actually has a nice cast in it. It's got Fred Gwynne from The Munsters, played Herman Munster. He's in this. Has Denise Crosby. She's from Star Trek fame, actually the Next Generation Star Trek fame. And Stephen King himself is actually in this, but I think that he does that with most of his movies.
Yeah, he always has some sort of appearance, kind of like M. Night Shyamalan does it.
Yeah, has like a little one-off, like he just plays a weird like 5 to 10 second character.
Yeah, and this one he's like a priest or something, right?
Yeah, he's like the preacher.
Yeah.
And just like all of Stephen King's movies, this takes place in Maine, which is a weird thing. Like he loves, I guess, where he lives, and he based almost everything in Maine. So yeah, it's weird, because the premise of this story is the family moves from Chicago to a city in Maine.
Yes.
So I thought this was a kind of a cool premise of a movie. Out of all his movies, I really like this one the best, book-wise and movie-wise. I like the whole fact of you're able to bury something and it comes back to life. Unfortunately, though, like everything has a price and a consequence. So, what they find out in the movie is that, that price and consequences, what gets buried and comes back is never coming back the same.
Yeah, this movie messed me up, man. When I first watched it, like just the tragedy of it, and like the whole thing with dealing with loss and mourning and everything like that. It was really like, I watched it kind of young, so it was really heavy themes, for somebody like that, just to learn about death and like knowing that we're all gonna die someday, and the grief that comes from that.
Yeah, but I mean, put into these people's shoes, like if you were to be in that same situation, I would think the majority of the population would probably do the same thing. They find that this mystical place that you can bury something and it comes back to life. They tested it out with their cat, and the cat came back and was successful. They're like, oh my god, it did come back to life. And then they had tragedy strike in their household. So grief-stricken parents, what are you going to do? That's the first thing you think of, is you want that person back in your life. So like I said, I think the majority of the populace would probably do the same thing, not knowing the consequences. But yeah, that's one of my favorite Stephen King's. Next to The Shining, I think The Shining is probably, like, if I had a top 11, my number 11 would be The Shining. But this is only top 10. Number 7 is Nightbreed. This is a 1990 horror movie based on a 1988 novella called Cabal. This is by Clive Barker. Clive Barker is a little eccentric when it comes to a lot of his writings. I originally had Hellraiser, which is also a Clive Barker.
Yeah.
Title. I had this as my original number 7, but thinking back, going through my list, I thought, you know what, I actually like Nightbreed a lot more than I liked Hellraiser.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Hellraiser is very devilish in that aspect. and the way that they torture people and they do their thing. It didn't really stick to me like Nightbreed. Nightbreed was kind of one of those really cool dark fantasies that I was like, what if? So the main character, Craig Schaefer, he plays Aaron Boone, who is sort of a mental patient, and David Cronenberg, another famous horror director and writer. He actually plays this doctor that's treating him, who's also a serial killer, and convinces Aaron, Craig Schaefer's character, that he is the perpetrator of these murders. And it's just this whole crazy, like, you're the one who's been doing this, and I'm going to keep you drugged up and keep you believing this. And it's not until his girlfriend starts investigating more and more about it. But while he's being sedated and having be put on all these drugs, he runs across these people that are called the Nightbreed, and they like reveal themselves basically to him. He gets kind of like in a altercation with them. One of them actually bites him, which infects him. So now he has their traits running through him. So somewhat like I guess going back to like Marvel, like with mutations. What happened here is it looked like it must have been dormant into him that he was supposed to be like one of them, and then that bite basically like opened it up for him to transform into one of the Nightbreed. So that's what happens, is that he transforms into one of them, and he goes to their where they live, which is underneath a cemetery called Midian, which is this really crazy world, like underworld that they live in. You see all different types of creatures and things, and it's basically them trying to get back at that doctor, trying to either get rid of him or like remove him from his position. But he's trying to out the people of Midian, and then he wants to kill them because he's a psychopath. So but yeah, it's a really cool, it's weird at first. When I first watched it, I had to watch it a second time because I kind of didn't understand what was going on with all the like psychoanalysis stuff that was happening in the doctor's office and while he was locked up. Because I was also, like you said, when you were watching Pet Sematary, being young, I was also young when I watched this, so it was just kind of one of those. I watched it and I just wasn't really paying attention that much to it, and then I had to rewatch it to actually understand, what was actually happening, so I could, have a better understanding of who these people were and what the premise of the story is.
That's interesting. My experience with this movie was completely different. I didn't see it till I was like in my 20s.
Really?
Because I just didn't know about it, but I knew these Marvel published these comics, these Nightbreed comics, and I would read them sometimes, and I didn't know exactly what it was, but like I knew a little bit of the lore about Midorian or this place. It's called Midorian? Midian. And so I heard these words before, and I knew some of these characters, like the character with that looks like a porcupine or something that shoots like quails at you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I had seen these before, but I came across the movie much later, and obviously the names Clive Barker and David Cronenberg jumped out at me, and I was like, okay, whoa, what is this, And yeah, the whole thing with I think the name of or at least in the comics, they called him Button Face, the serial killer persona. And
yeah, that's what I thought his name was actually, because I've seen a lot of like media that had the posters and the stickers and things like that, and that's basically what was printed with it. But looking at like the actual paperwork here, it shows that he was Dr. Decker, but his serial killer persona is named Curtis.
Okay.
That's just a random ass name.
Curtis, a psychotherapist who doubles as a masked serial killer. Okay.
Yeah, so like Curtis doesn't sound scary, you know. Button Face sounds scary.
Yeah, that's how I knew him. And but yeah, the whole thing where like he actually becomes a monster in the process of trying to destroy them. It was interesting that the monsters here are the good guys and the humans are the bad guys.
Yeah.
In this one, right?
Well, that's humanity for you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take on Clive Barker. I preferred Nightbreed over Hellraiser.
Good pick.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. There's actually 2 versions of it. They released a director's cut, and they have there's 3 versions. There's a director's cut, and then there's a cut called the Cabal cut. And if you could find that one, that's the one to watch. That's got all the left out, cut out, you know, on the floor scenes and stuff that you want to make sure that you. I'm one of those guys who, like, when someone records or when someone films something, I want to watch all of it. I don't care how bad it is. Like, I want to see it from start to finish. You know, if you filmed it, I want to watch it. You know, and if you have those extra features, those are the DVDs that I'm buying. Is buying everything that had the special features, all the cut scenes. I don't want to just watch a regular movie and knowing that, you know, those scenes were cut out, because a lot of times it may not be relevant. They cut it out for time, but it's relevant to the story.
Yeah, it brings context to a lot of the things that sort of are left unsaid in the originals. Yeah, the costuming was incredible. I really liked all the costumes. Like, cosplayers today would be put to shame by some of these costumings.
Yeah, it's outrageous, like how good they looked, you know, and how original. You know, and I don't know if it was Clive himself doing the sketches of each of these characters, or if he had
like the character design and all that.
Yeah, or if he had somebody, you know, doing it for him. I'd have to look more into that. But I know he's a little bit of an artist himself, so he likes to do like the doodles and create like his own little characters and his own little world. But yeah, I'll have to look into that and get back to our listeners on this. All right, so that was number 7. Coming in at number 6 from 1987 is Lost Boys. So I like vampires. I like vampires a lot, and I thought this was a great vampire story. Coming of age kids, you know, also on the reference of the Lost Boys, basically taken off like Peter Pan and Neverland. You know, just like the vampires, they never grow up. So, you know, it was a nice choice of name for the movie for them.
Yeah.
You know, you got this family that had just recently moved to this new town. You know, you want to make friends. You just don't want to make the wrong friends, and that's what happened here. So this is a Joel Schumacher movie back in 1987, and this one has a real terrific cast of Jason Patric, Kiefer Sutherland, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Jamie Gertz, Edward Herman, and Diane Wiest. Also has, where did he go? Alex Winter. I love Alex Winter because I love Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So when I saw him, I was like, I know that guy. So it was cool. But yeah, it's a pretty cool little ditty that they put together here. And it's also got that saxophone player that
Tim Capello.
Yeah, that basically started the whole like movement of, you know, needing to have like some half-naked guy playing some musical instrument in the late 80s, early 90s movies, up until like they started basically casting him as the same role in a lot of older movies, like later 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, totally. He made it iconoclast. He made a saxophone cool for the 90s again, right?
Yeah, Yeah, back in the day when, you know, it was like a cool thing for jazz, and then like it just became like, oh, it's just, you know, another musical.
Yeah, it's old timey or whatever.
Yeah, musical instrument that nobody really cares about, and then he comes out on stage and is just like, you know, all ripped up, muscular, and, you know, just playing this badass fucking song, and he's like the main attraction. It's like fuck guitar, you know, and the rhythm section and vocals. You know, this guy's just tearing it up with the fucking saxophone. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, this movie, for, like I said, I love vampires and I love vampire stories, and I thought this was such a cool take on vampires. You know, the coming of age and young teens basically taking life and matters into their own hands, and but like every vampire, you know, they have a sire. So
yeah,
there's a little bit of a twist in the movie with it. So that's kind of was really cool. So it was a very well written movie as well.
Yeah, they went on with the classic tropes of the vampire lore, but like, yeah, it sort of brought it back down to a more contemporary feel, especially with the kids who like. Everything they know about vampires is from comic books, because they gather at this one comic book store in the town, and they even have like their own comic book to give to people to sort of a guide.
Yeah, so we got the Frog Brothers who run the comic book store.
Right.
They befriend the younger brother, who's played by Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and what is the other guy's name? Jameson Newlander. So they play Edgar and Alan Frog.
Yeah.
And then Corey Haim is Sam, and then his older brother is Michael, who's played by Jason Patric. So he's the one who befriends Keith Sutherland and his group, the Lost Boys. And so the Frog Brothers in the comic store, are basically educating young Sam on, you know, the whys and the do's and don'ts, you know, for living in their small town of Santa Clara, you know, and what to look out for and how to prepare.
Yeah, the aesthetics of this movie, I mean, quintessential 80s stuff, right?
Yeah. Everything from, you know, the look, you know, and the wardrobe and how they talk, and also being, you know, based in California.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's definitely full of all that.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is Corey Haim's, like that jacket that he's wearing, and that first part where he goes into town. He's got like this long jacket, but with like those 80s, like sort of like bright colors. That stood out to me, because usually those kind of coats are dark in color.
Yeah, I think the neon thing was like huge, like in the mid to late 80s.
Yeah. So totally 80s in that one.
Next, coming in at number 5 is The Exorcist, 1973. Actually, I think I have that in your pile.
Yeah, I got it.
But we did a whole podcast on our last podcast on The Exorcist and The Exorcist movies.
Yeah, what haven't we said about this one?
Yeah, exactly. Like, although I did read a couple things that I saw that the writer of this movie, William Peter Blatty, was actually in the movie.
Oh yeah.
He plays.
If I'm not mistaken, he plays the director. No.
Yeah, he plays the producer. He plays the producer.
The producer, yeah.
Of Ellen Burstyn, who's she's an actress in the movie, playing an actress, and the producer of the movie that she's supposed to be doing is the writer of the actual book, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I also didn't know that either. So, I mean, there's not really much to tell. I mean, if you've listened to the other podcast, you know, everything and anything about the Exorcist is in there. If you haven't seen it, shame on you. You should see this. This is definitely one of the greats from 1973. Like I said, it's written by William Peter Blatty. This is directed by William Friedkin, and it's just, it's got awesome acting in it, except for some things with Linda Blair. But those are obviously the memes of everything. With her throwing up the pea soup, or or you see some comedy things of them saying guacamole, because it's all green. But but yeah, it's Max von Sydow. Just you couldn't get any better than him. He's definitely one of the great actors of our century.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Miller was great in it too.
Yeah, I read that he actually died very young after this movie, which I thought he did a lot more roles, but looking into him, I didn't see he do very much after.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Good actor.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely a really, really well written story, and it's just one of those things that it gets you. Like I explained before too, like when I first saw it, I saw it in the theater and just really thought I was in the wrong movie just from the beginning, because they were in Iraq, and I was just like, this doesn't look like The Exorcist, or at least I don't remember this being The Exorcist, because when I actually first ever saw it, I was already watching the scene where the mom, Ellen Burstyn's character, was having that party. So that was well past,
the first sequence.
Yeah, the first sequence where Father Merrin was, helping that archaeological dig, and then where he sees the statue of Pazuzu.
Yeah. That whole sequence just sort of establishes the antagony between both of these characters, the demon and Father Merrin. Yeah. Good sequence, good movie, just good horror right there.
Yeah, definitely go check it out. And if you like I said, if you haven't seen it, definitely see it. And then I've also heard good things on a side note. The Pope's Exorcist.
Oh yeah, I have to go watch that.
Yeah, I still need to see it too. Your brother went and saw it.
Yeah.
And was telling me, you got to go see this. This movie was awesome. I was
I was like, don't
bitch,
give me any spoilers.
I was like, man. Yeah, I mean, we played the trailer on the last podcast for it, and yeah, definitely want to check it out. So yeah. All right, moving on to number 4 on my list is another Wes Craven movie. It's from 1984. It's a little ditty I like to call A Nightmare on Elm Street. This one has relatively also an unknown cast. This actually was Johnny Depp's first movie.
Introducing Johnny
Depp, that is correct. There are some people here that were character actors and well known, like John Saxon. He plays Nancy's father, who was played by Heather Langenkamp, and Ronnie Blakely. She's a well-known character actress. Robert Englund was relatively also unknown, and he plays the character of Freddy Krueger, who was the Springwood slasher. Basically has come back from the undead, or come back to life in dreams, and is murdering the children of the people that murdered him in retribution. So another story. This was actually directed and written by Wes Craven, so this is all him. So like I'm guessing back in the day, he was the Kevin Williamson of the time. But this movie was great. Really good story, really intriguing. Whole new premise of how somebody could be a serial killer, and I just thought it was fantastic. The cast that they had were really well acted. Everybody that played their parts. I didn't see anything that seemed kind of lame or I'm trying to think of the word. I lost it. But yeah, everybody did a good job in the movie.
Yeah, for me, the reveal that the parents were actually in cahoot, or just knowing that the entity was a thing, that they knew the whole story about Freddy and everything like that, and that it was up to the kids to have to resolve the whole thing.
And that's super shitty for the parents to leave it to the kids. Oh, we fucked up, and you guys are gonna have to fix it for us.
Right. One thing that I noticed, because in rewatching these movies, I watched Nightmare, and then immediately after I watched Scream, I noticed that the actor that plays the police officer, or one of the police officers, Joseph Whipp, plays Sergeant Parker, and then he is Sheriff Burke in Scream.
Really? Oh.
And then somebody had said, he probably was so distraught from living on the town of what happened on Elm Street, he moved to the other town, not knowing that town was crazy too.
Moved from Springwood or Springwood. Moves from Springwood to Woodsboro.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the same actor, and in both movies he plays a cop. So that was kind of funny.
Well, Robert Englund also has a cameo in Scream too. He plays the freaking janitor, and his name is Fred.
Oh, right.
I read that the other day. I thought that was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, everything from this movie I thought was great. The music for it was really good, and then just the writing overall. Like, Wes Craven was so creative, and he came up with the fucking that nursery rhyme, for Freddy Krueger, and that's just iconic. Anything now with a nursery rhyme, what are you gonna think of? The first thing you think of is fucking Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
So it's just
growing up, I thought that was like a real one, that like an old one from old timey times.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe he just took some liberties and changed a few things, but
no, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's definitely perfect. Like I said, between that, the writing and the music that was chosen, I don't know who was it that did the music. I want to say it was like Harry Mancini. It was the name of the composer for the music, but yeah, he did a terrific job. I mean, it was eerie, like when you were listening to it, and it was like going on, like the neck, the hairs on the neck would stand up, or on your forearms, like you'd be creeped out. And that's them doing a great job. When you can do that with music, where it provokes like that emotion, you've knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it becomes like almost another character in the movie.
All right, moving on to number 3. So I had a couple of changes in my lineup. Hellraiser was one of them. So my number 7 was Hellraiser, then I changed it to Nightbreed. And this is another change. So my original was An American Werewolf in London, John Landis. Great movie, 1981. The transformation scene was just fucking out of the park. Like, that was scary as shit, watching someone transform into a fucking werewolf. Like, you're just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But the movie that scared me the most as a child, as a werewolf movie, was Silver Bullet. So, which is also another Stephen King movie. So this movie also has Corey Haim in it. Also has Gary Busey, who later in life had a motorcycle accident and kind of was a little, I don't know if he went crazy or it just really messed with his head. So he gets a lot of shit for it. For just some of the things that he says or the way he acts. But no one really realizes, that's from a motorcycle accident. He's not doing it on purpose, and he's not being like that because, he thinks it's funny. It's a mental thing, that happened to him. So it sucks. And, but before that happened, he was a really good actor. I liked Gary Busey a lot. He did a lot of really good things. And obviously that motorcycle accident's going to follow him for the rest of his life, as that stigma, which sucks. But this movie was really good. I quite enjoyed it a lot. This was based off of Stephen King's novella Cycle of the Werewolf. And like I said, it has Gary Busey in it, Corey Haim, has Terry O'Quinn. He's a very well-known character actor. Wasn't he also in Lost? Was he one of the guys from Lost? I think he was the bald guy, the older bald white guy.
I don't. I'm Lost.
Yeah, I want to say that was him. I could be wrong though. Sometimes I don't know. But yeah, the premise of this story is that there is a werewolf in town, and he's killing people. And the character of Corey Haim is out one day, who also happens to be paralyzed. So he's in a wheelchair. So he's already pretty much fucked from point one, especially in a town where there's a monster, lurking about. Like, how's he think he's going to be getting away? So he's attacked one night at this garage, and he finds a way to. I think it was like a firework. He shoots at the werewolf in the eye.
Yeah. His uncle gives him a bunch of fireworks, but tells him to keep them. But instead of doing that, he goes out into the woods and starts firing off some of them, and that's when he gets attacked.
Yeah, he is from fucking Lost.
Oh yeah, that's him. He looks so different though.
Yeah, he's older, obviously. But yeah, the Terry O'Quinn is also in this. So getting back. So yeah, the werewolf goes to attack him, and he fires off, one of the bottle rockets or whatever rocket it was, and hits him in the eye. And so now he's basically trying to convey this story to people, and people aren't really believing him.
Yeah.
And then we see the pastor shows up with an eye patch.
Yeah.
So now he's kind of putting two and two together, thinking, what the fuck? And it's just this whole cat and mouse game that's happening throughout the entire movie, where he's trying to figure it out, but also trying to investigate it little by little without the pastor realizing that he knows that it's him, even though I think he knows. I mean, he's not stupid. So, but yeah, it's very, very suspenseful, scary as fuck. It got me worse than American Werewolf in London. Just the suspense, the overall suspense, because I can imagine myself as that little kid in a wheelchair, and then now there's a fucking werewolf lurking about. What am I gonna do? I'm not gonna be able to out-race a werewolf in my wheelchair.
Yeah, this one was interesting. I think it feels like Stephen King sort of. Because a lot of the stories he tells are from the perspective of kids, and this one really drives it home. Gary Busey has a really cool story arc where he's an alcoholic at first. He's that cool uncle, but he's an alcoholic. He's always drunk, and he has this really cool story arc where he stops drinking and he becomes a little bit more wholesome, and that's when the Corey Haim character asks for his help. At first he doesn't believe it, but little by little, the whole movie is you're wondering, who's the werewolf, right? And then the big reveal comes up. It's really well pieced together.
Yeah, when he finally decides to take Corey Haim's side on I think you're telling the truth, he starts doing the things that he can do. He goes to the sheriff and tells the sheriff, hey, you need to investigate this. You need to see, what the fuck's really going on in this town. So, and, he's basically had his back the entire time.
Yeah, the entire time, yeah. Builds him that. Because, I don't know if he builds the first silver bullet, but he sort of builds the second one, right? The faster, cooler one.
Yeah, it's really cool how they built the little race shell like around his wheelchair.
Yeah, and the whole thing where they actually build a silver bullet from their pendants. His sister, because his sister is the narrator the entire time, right? So,
Yeah.
They both take their pendants, which are like one of them is like a medallion, and the other one's maybe a crucifix or something, and they melt it down. They go to this one guy that makes the bullet and all of that.
Oh yeah. It says right here that they had to convince their uncle to take Jane's silver cross and Marty's silver medallion to a gunsmith.
Yeah.
Who melts them down and creates the silver bullet for the gun.
Yeah, and even the gunsmith is he's already like, oh, is this for a werewolf or what? So he already knew. So and the final showdown, the suspense of like losing the bullet and having to get it back and everything so they can shoot the werewolf. Good stuff. Scary.
Yeah, like I said, it's just suspenseful, super suspenseful, and being a young kid when I watched it, I was just like, man, this was like more than my little heart could take.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, coming in at number 2, this one I couldn't decide between the two, so I combined them. Because they're basically the same movie. Just one is from 1931, and the other one is from 1992. And this is Dracula, or Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I have, I guess it's in your pile. I have those tied at number 2 because, like I said, I couldn't decide, and I love both of them equally. Which I find is funny how they label this one as English language film.
Yeah,
because they had that Spanish version one, which I thought was super cool. Like,
yeah, interesting fun fact. They actually filmed the 1931 English language film and the Spanish language film at the same time, but with different actors. Obviously, the Spanish one was with Spanish-speaking actors, which was interesting. I was watching it, and some of the actors, like the guy who plays Count Dracula, his name is Carlos Villarreal. He plays the Count. He's from Spain, so he has a different Spanish accent. Lupita Tovar plays Eva. She's Mexican American. She has a different accent in Spanish. And then we have the guy that plays Renfield. Pablo Alvarez Rubio, he's Argentinian, so he has a different accent. So like, it's kind of funny to see them all interact in all the different Spanish accents.
Yeah. Everything, obviously, Spain and Mexico have huge accent differences.
Yeah.
With Spain heavily on the THs, so a lot of the sounds that they pronounce things with.
It's almost like the difference between like British English and American English.
Yeah. So you can definitely spot someone that's not, speaking actual like Mexican Spanish to where they're speaking like Spanish from Spain. You're just like,
Yeah.
You're not a firm around here, are you?
But that was interesting seeing like the same sets, but in different angles with different actors. It was interesting to see it.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, that's smart on their part, especially from being that long ago that they were doing that. You don't hear of them doing that now. It's if there's a Spanish or I guess a foreign language version of a popular movie that comes out, they just build all new sets.
Yeah. Basically, they filmed 2 movies at the same time, almost.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's completely smart, and probably like it would be in studios' best interest to do things like that.
Oh yeah,
save money because
save a lot of money.
They're not building 2 different sets and it being looking different. Because this is almost like I think you said it was somewhat shot frame for frame.
Somewhat, yeah. They had some differences. But yeah, it was basically the same thing. They used basically the same filming crew, everything.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, Dracula and Bram Stoker's Dracula. So 1931 Dracula. This movie is directed by Todd Browning and uncredited Carl Freund, which I didn't know. I didn't know it had two actual directors. I just thought it had the one. But it's based off of the story from Bram Stoker. The director actually got the legal rights to create this movie because there was a legal action that was happening when the movie Nosferatu came out, and they basically sued. They sued the guy who created Nosferatu and won. The widow of
Bram Stoker.
Bram Stoker. So she took it, matters in her own hands because she never gave permission. But this is Bela Lugosi at his finest. You just couldn't get to me a better Dracula, at least until I saw Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Gary Oldman took over the role, and I just thought, two Draculas, these guys are the sequential Draculas of movies for me. Bela Lugosi, played the part to a T. I mean, I think he probably thought in his mind that he was Dracula when he was filming this movie. He was Hungarian, right?
Yeah, he was Hungarian.
Yeah, so he already had that little bit of an accent that played perfect to the character. So, and he had that look. He was really had those looks. Everything from this movie to White Zombie, he made these looks, and it was just, you knew that it was him, obviously, but he made those movies with these looks. He can convey, to an audience, all these different types of emotion with these looks.
A lot of eye acting, I think it's called.
Yeah, he was the master of it. It seemed like. I love this movie. Like I said, this was one of the first monster movies that I watched after I watched Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, because that's what struck my love for these horror beings, these horror villains. And it just, after I watched Dracula, I was just like, oh, I gotta watch everything now. So, and then it wasn't until 1992 when Francis Ford Coppola put out his movie, Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Gary Oldman, that I just thought it was like a brand new version of the original Dracula, and it was set in modern time. We had obviously better filming equipment and sets, and the story was a little more lavish and more in depth compared to the original 31. And they were able to touch upon a lot more things of the novel than the original, but the original conveyed it pretty well to the book. The 92 one I thought was just as good. And then also has a great cast: Gary Oldman, like I said, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves. Which, a fun fact about this is that Winona Ryder will tell everybody under the fucking sun that she is married to Keanu Reeves, because they were married in the film, and they were married by an actual real village priest. So she considers them to still be married because they never were divorced or anything like that. So she's like, yes, Keanu Reeves is my husband.
So in her mind, that was a real wedding.
Yes, in her mind, it was a real wedding, I'm guessing. And she won't let it up, to anybody. She's like, no, yeah, we're married, so he's my husband.
I mean, in her defense, that is Keanu Reeves we're talking about.
Yeah. If I was a woman, I guess, I would be saying the same thing too if I was married to him. Yeah, he's my husband. Back away. But yeah, they just recently did a movie. I don't remember the title of it, but when they were doing the promotion of that movie, that was one of the things that was brought up during their Q&A. And yeah, she was right there. She's like, yeah, we got married, and she's they brought a real village priest, and this is 100% real. And you could see in his eyes, he's just kind of okay.
Where's the exit?
He's I'm just going to give this to her. And then Anthony Hopkins, who played Van Helsing in it. Great cast. I actually just read that one of the brides was Monica
Bellucci.
Yeah, Monica Bellucci.
Oh yeah.
Which I didn't actually notice that.
Yeah.
And I don't recognize the other two actresses that were the other two brides, but yeah, Monica, she's made a name for herself. Cary Ells, he was in it. He played Lord Holmwood in it. I think he was the guy who was supposed to be Lucy's husband or to marry Lucy.
Oh right, yeah. Him. He's one of those guys that I'm always like, hey, it's that guy.
Yeah. And he obviously made a big name for himself with The Princess Bride, and then also when they had the Saw franchise, he was in the first Saw movie.
Right, that's him. Yep. Who plays Renfield? It's Tom Waits.
Oh yeah.
Tom Waits plays Renfield.
Yeah, I knew that. That's crazy. Like, he's such a good musician. Like, he's got that distinct voice.
Yeah.
So, and then he was like his demeanor and everything in the movie. He was just very psychotic.
Yeah, he was good, right?
Yeah, he was really good. I thought he was obviously better than the Renfield from 31. But that guy, he did a great job. Conveying like what a fucking crazy loon he was.
Yeah. Also, both movies start the same but different, right? Because the Bela Lugosi, you see Renfield come in, and then that's when they go to London, and then in the Bram Stoker's, it's Keanu Reeves's Jonathan Harker, like that first meets. Goes out to meet him.
Because in the beginning of the movie, it's actually it's like the backstory of how he becomes Dracula. With his war, being Vlad Tepes, with the Ottoman Empire, and then the first seeing of the castle for like of the film with old Dracula is Jonathan Harker. So, but yeah, those are my choices for Dracula. I couldn't choose between them, so fuck it. Both of them are number 2.
Tie.
That's right. All right, and finally, my number 1 is going to be John Carpenter's Halloween, 1978. This quintessential movie, I think, as a slasher film, was the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen when I was a kid. That's why it's my number 1. This gave me nightmares. I couldn't imagine anybody that didn't speak wearing the mask that he wore, that had no expression, no emotion, just heavy breathing, and then also coming after you on one of the fun, like one of the funnest nights, that a kid could live in on Halloween. It just it was just overall scary. I think this is also one of the reasons why I never asked my mom to have a babysitter, just because of the story premise of these babysitters are being stalked and murders are happening, and it's like, oh man, if I get a babysitter, that's something I'm gonna have to worry about. Yeah. Because I'm a little kid and I'm naive, so I don't know any better. But yeah, this has a really good cast. Obviously, John Carpenter having his name attached to it, which is a funny story that he basically was asked to direct it, and he said he'd only direct it for these reasons, and then the last reason was, I need my name above the film. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. So that's why it's John Carpenter's Halloween. But he wrote it with his writing partner, was I think also his lover at one point, and then obviously they just stayed friends when things didn't work out between them. Deborah Hill, so both of them wrote this. Had the great actor Donald Pleasance play a role in it. He didn't have very much time to do his roles for the movie. They basically shot his stuff and then was done. But I think he enjoyed it so much, he made it his goal to come back and reprise his role as Loomis in almost all the sequels up until 6, where he died during the making of it. Also with the exception of 3, because 3 had nothing to do with Michael Myers, so he wasn't in that. But the virtually had a relatively unknown cast to that point also. Donald Pleasence was pretty much the only known actor in the movie. But it had Jamie Lee Curtis. This was her first film, so introducing Jamie Lee Curtis. Had PJ Souls. She's done some things up to that point. Not A-list, but, at least to be known. And then there's also a funny story with Nancy Loomis, who played Annie Brackett, the daughter of Sheriff Brackett. She's actually the wife of the editor for the movie, Tommy Wallace. And they kind of needed an extra female character, and they asked her, like, hey, what are you doing? You want to be in this? And that's basically how she got her role for it. And then you have Brian Andrews, who played Tommy Doyle. You had Charles Cypress, who played Sheriff Brackett. I'm not sure if Brian has done anything, that has given him any type of recognition in his name or not, but Charles Cypress has gone on to do other roles, and he also had a reprisal role as a security guard in the Rob Zombie's Halloween. And then the girl that played Lindsay Wallace, that was being babysat by Annie Brackett, and then also eventually was babysitted by Laurie Strode, was Kyle Richards, and she grew up to become one of the famous housewives of Orange County, or not Orange County, I'm sorry, of Beverly Hills. So that's where you'll see her name. And then she also came back in the Blumhouse Halloweens to reprise her role as Lindsay Wallace. So it was nice to see her come full circle. And then you have Nancy Stevens, who played Marion Chambers. She was the nurse, Loomis's nurse to Michael Myers. But yeah, and then Nick Castle, he played Michael Myers with the mask. And then there was a guy named Tony Moran who played Michael Myers unmasked. And then also any of the asylum scenes and stuff like that at his age of 21. So, but yeah, this was like I said, overall, this was the movie that had just scared the crap out of me. And that's why it's my number one. I couldn't imagine anybody, menacing like Michael Myers. And that's why he's my favorite. I have the Thorn tattoo on me from Curse of Thorn for part 6. I used to have a ton of different masks, but through the years of wearing and making fan films and stuff like that, they all get used and abused and end up being thrown away. I'm currently trying to actually do a fan film with one of our other guys here at work. I bought the jumpsuit for him, so now I'm just looking for a really good copy of the mask. And I think I'm probably going to get one that's close to the 2018 Halloween, something along those lines, if not more of the Shatner 78 one, which I think would be cool.
Yeah, good choices.
Yeah, but this was all shot locally in California here, where we're from. We're from Orange County, though, and this was shot mostly in LA and Pasadena, places that you can still go visit. You can see where the original Myers house is in Pasadena. It's like some kind of law office now, which is super cool because during hours that it's open, you can actually walk through and walk up the staircase, where Michael walked up to go kill his sister and, from when he was a little kid. And then a lot of different of the neighborhoods and stuff where they shot in LA still pretty much look the same. Obviously probably some different paint. And I think one of the places has a little bit different architecture in the front, like they changed something up. But other than that, you can recognize it. And all this stuff can be found online. But yeah, this was the number one grossing independent film of all time. So good job to John for having this be a success that nobody thought was going to be. This was actually also originally titled Babysitter Murders, even though in the notes here it says that Erwin Yablans says that's false, but every other interview that I've actually seen him talk, he says that's what they were going to call it when he suggested why not have this all happen on one specific night and then it be Halloween night, because that makes it scary, which again, like I said earlier, that's a fucking shitty thing to do to a kid who loves Halloween, is to make a movie about someone, killing babysitters and the kids that they're babysitting. Yeah. Even though he didn't kill anybody, any of the kids, you don't know, if he would have, you don't know the mentality of that type of killer, so. But the overall film itself, I get goosebumps when I watch it still. There's still some part of me that gets really anxious, that has that anxiety when I watch it. It takes me away. I like the whole persona of being lost in the movie. I don't think of it as like a horror movie. As I'm watching it, I'm engulfed in it, which is really cool. So I definitely like movies that do that, that keep my mind off of everyday things and have me trapped into what's going on in their world. But yeah, that's my thing with Halloween. I love Michael Myers. Always have, always will. He's my boy. So that's why Halloween's my number one.
Awesome.
And then the last thing I want to touch on is the music. We've talked about that with other movies. I did that with the Nightmare on Elm Street. The music for this also, John Carpenter did the score and the music for this as well, all with the piano. Simple keys. Just took a couple of them to make that iconic sound that everybody knows. As soon as you hear it, that's Halloween. Everything from the build-ups in most of the scenes to the actual iconic Halloween, 1-2-1-2 piano that he does for it. So it's just I don't know. I can't really speak anything else about it. This is definitely one of the ones that you need to see if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, shame on you for being a horror fan. But if you have, kudos to you. Let me know. Let us know what your favorite Halloween is. Is it the original? Is it the Blumhouse franchise? Is it the Rob Zombie? Is it the multiple timelines that they have going on? So drop us in the line. Let us know.
Yeah, totally. I want to say the music is iconic and it really makes a really good ringtone.
Yeah. That's one of my ringtones for later in the seasons, getting closer to autumn and Christmas.
Yeah.
I have that, and then the rest of the time, obviously, I have Star Wars. So
nice.
I'm a nerd like that. But yeah, that's my number one, Halloween. Yep, that's my top 10 list. Like it or hate it, I don't care. It's my list, not yours. So what you can do is you can send us your list. Tell us what your favorite top 10 movies are. We would love to hear from you guys. If you're out there listening, there are people listening. I see it on YouTube. So definitely check it out. And this is part 1, so we're going to be doing part 2 with Ollin's top 10 list. That way he can talk and I don't sound like an idiot. But anyways, so I'd like to thank you guys for listening. We also like to thank our unofficial sponsor, Liquid Death, for providing. Well, actually, they didn't provide. I provided it. But we would love for them to provide us these delicious waters. The Liquid Death the plastic, murder your thirst. We have a couple different cans here. We have the mountain water and the severed lime. I have yet to find the teas.
Yeah, I haven't been able to see I was really intrigued about those iced teas.
Yeah, me too. I definitely want to try that.
I haven't seen them
Armless
anywhere,
Palmer. Just the names that they come up with for these drinks are just awesome.
Yeah, and the art that they put on the cans and the boxes is really cool too.
Yeah, definitely really dope campaign that they've got going on here. It's very smart. But yeah, so we would like to give a shout out to you guys as our unofficial sponsor, Liquid Death. Your cans provide our quenched thirst. So here's to you.
Murder your thirst. Let's hit the spot.
All right, and as always, you can find our music for the podcast is by a band named Zao. They are Zao Online, I believe is their website, and you can find all the information for them on our website, which is www.thehorrorscene.com. You can also find all of our social media on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. You can find our podcast not only on our website, but on YouTube, on Rumble, and you can find the podcast on Anchor.fm, which is now Spotify for podcasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a name change, so I'm gonna have to update that on the board here. Yeah, so check it out. Please give us a like, subscribe, help us out, pass the word along, do what you got to do, make us your number one horror podcast. So I'd like to also thank you guys again for listening. We really appreciate it. Remember, guys, to stay creepy and keep it spooky. From our grave to yours, these have been your last rites. I am one of your horror hosts, Brandon Brown, and always with me is my co-host,
Ollin Hernandez.
And we bid you guys a good night.